The desire to have a large and preferably a black sedan is embedded in the subconscious of many Russians since the days of the nomenclatura Volga. A striking example is the Hyundai Sonata. These cars are loved by both government agencies and taxi companies, so the choice of used Sonatas of the fourth and fifth generations on the secondary market is great. And the reliability is good too. Fourth and fifth we call Sonatas more out of habit. The generation that was released in 2001 and is still being produced at Tag AZ is rather the second and a half. The first Sonata was born in 1985, and even after the 1993 and 1996 model year upgrades, it remained essentially a variation on the 1983 Mitsubishi Galant. In 1998, a completely new Sonata appeared, with double wishbone front and multi-link rear suspension and modified Mitsubishi engines. It is her that we know as the fourth, and its modernized version as the fifth. The Kia Magentis and Optima sedans are built on the same platform. The assembly of Sonatas was mastered by the Taganrog automobile plant. Tag's cars are devoid of any special emblems, but their prices are even more attractive than those of the imported Sonatas. It is no wonder that already, according to the results of the first incomplete year of sales, and production at Tag AZ started in April 2004, Sonata took a leading position in its class and maintained it for another year. Almost 50,000 cars were assembled in Taganrog, and in total our market absorbed 1.5 times more. But the Sonata is popular not only because of its affordability, it manages to look more expensive than it costs. Generous chrome trim, in front, redesigned in the Korean taste of Mercedes features, in the back, Jaguar taillights. But it's far from premium. The joints of body parts are not very neat in places. The gaps are uneven, the metal is thin, dents appear even after mild blows. Chrome-plated elements do not like our anti-icing reagents, which also affect the contacts of the mass wires in the engine compartment and the circuit of sound signals located in front of the radiator. By the way, a working telescopic antenna on an older car is a rarity. And despite the body's good resistance to corrosion, paint chips bloom on it quite quickly, especially on the beak of the hood. The interior is spacious and does not loosen up over time. But do not expect European comfort. The sound insulation of the wheel arches is rather weak. Climate control requires constant temperature adjustment. Fabric upholstery wears out quickly. Leather upholstery is much more durable. Both the front double lever and the rear multi-link are quite reliable. The replacement of individual elements usually begins at 50 to 60,000 kilometers with penny stabilizer bushings. Racks of stabilizers live up to at least 80,000. By the same moment or a little later, the turn of ball bearings, front hub bearings and silent blocks of the upper rear suspension arms is coming. After 100 to 120,000 kilometers, the silent blocks of the front levers, front and rear shock absorbers will need to be replaced. The mechanic's best friend when repairing the Sonata's suspension is a grinder. Bolts and nuts rust quickly and turn sour tightly, so it is sometimes impossible to separate the parts without surgical intervention. The suspension of the Sonata is American, soft. It eats most of the road bumps, but annoys with the buildup on the waves. The Sonata holds a high-speed straight line acceptable, but it rolls in corners. There is emptiness on the steering wheel. And with age, the character of the Sonata does not get better. For Taganrog-made cars, the choice of engines is small, 2-liter, 4s with a capacity of 131 or 137 horsepower, and a V-shaped 173 horsepower 6 with a volume of 2.7 liters. All of them are in many ways similar to the engines of the fourth generation. Occasionally, sedans from America come across with a 2.4-liter 4-cylinder engine, 150 horsepower, and since 2004, with a V-shaped 6, 3.3, 235 horsepower, as in the sixth, and in fact, the third Sonata, sold with us under the name Sonata NF. In some Asian markets, there were also cars with a different 2-liter engine producing 147 horsepower and a turbo diesel, 2-liter, 112 horsepower. 6s have proven themselves from the best side, high torque and unpretentious. True, they need to change the oil in them every 10,000 kilometers, and the camshaft drive belt, after 50,000 kilometers. But the balance shaft is driven by a reliable chain. Of course, there can be problems with spark plugs with platinum electrodes, but regular ones at $5 a piece are also quite suitable as replacements. To remove the 3 spark plugs in the row of cylinders closest to the engine shield, you will need to remove the intake manifold. But you still have to do this if you don't replace the spent candles in time. then the increased load due to the spark gap excessively increased by erosion will kill the ignition module. 2-liter engines with mechanics pull normally, but with an automatic transmission, such as Sonata, is already sluggish. 2-liter engines also have problems with candles and an oxygen sensor, $130, which often fails after 130,000 kilometers. On a 131 horsepower engine, the timing belt also needs to be replaced after 50,000 kilometers. After all, when it breaks, the matter is most often not limited to bent valves. You have to sacrifice the cylinder head. And the balance shafts are driven not by a chain, but by a belt, which, when broken, will inevitably fall under the timing belt, and the same sad ending. Another problem is in the valve guide sleeve pair. Even a small amount of resin on the valve stem due to low-quality gasoline can jam the valves. What is to blame? One can only guess, because this does not happen on other motors. And in 2-liter engines, the lower radiator tank flows more often. In 137 horsepower engines, cases of premature timing belt breakage are very rare, and there are no balance shafts at all. But after a 100,000th run, they will need to adjust the clearances in the valve mechanism by selecting washers. The Sonata's 5-speed manual transmission is distinguished by stretched gear ratios and a very clear operation of the shift mechanism. The 4-speed automatic is very slow, and the delays are noticeable in manual mode. For each of the boxes, the oil change period is 90,000 kilometers. If the oil is not changed, then the automatic will first begin to switch harder, and then it may completely fail due to the failure of the friction discs. Not paying attention to the mechanics is fraught with accelerated wear of synchronizers, triple in first and second gears. A clutch kit, even with quiet driving, is rarely enough for more than 120,000 kilometers, and it is not cheap, $400. The original front brake pads on cars with automatic serve an average of 20 to 30,000 kilometers, with mechanics, 30 to 40,000. The rear ones live 1.5 times longer. Brake discs usually hold 2 sets of pads. Well, in the rear drum brakes of 2-liter cars without ABS, the pads serve 80 to 90,000 kilometers. You can also find Sonatas from America on the market. They are cheap there, so 3- and 5-year-old cars were brought to us, which until recently were on average $1,000 more affordable than local cars. Americans, in addition to digitizing instruments in miles, a different frequency step in the radio, and at least 4 airbags, differ in lighting technology, including otherwise located turn signal repeaters. Because of this, they have the original front fenders and bumper. You can also service them at a dealer technical center, and consumables for a 2.4-liter engine are not a problem, the same as on the previous generation Hyundai Santa Fe. But the best used Sonata is the one that was once bought new from official dealers. It's not just about the transparent history. The Russian Sonatas have a more powerful heater, reinforced silent blocks of the lower front and rear levers, increased ground clearance, according to our measurements, 154 millimeters. But among such cars there are just a lot of nomenclature copies, and cars that have served in a taxi, which should be avoided. Their mileage is often very high. And do not neglect the test drive before buying, especially on a 2-liter Sonata with an automatic. And after the purchase, regardless of the numbers on the odometer. In addition to replacing all technical fluids, we recommend changing the timing belt. The most common combination in the aftermarket, 2/3 of offers, is a 2-liter engine and a manual transmission. Should I buy a used Sonata? On the one hand, this is a large and comfortable car at the price of the same year Golf class of more famous brands. It is quite demanding on maintenance, but with timely and high-quality service it does not cause noticeable trouble, at least for the first 3 to 5 years. In terms of reliability, there are no obvious punctures. On the other hand, size does not always matter. However, not for everyone.